Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. In this video, I'm going to clear the Abyss of Legends path using a team full of hero #champions to complete the latest Carina challenge. So in this video, I'm going to use a fairly unique team instead of going through the route of using Sentry or other ramp-up champions like Heimdall. So first of all, in the first fight, we are going to face Darkhawk with Stark Enhanced Spider-Man. So in this fight, we just need to be mindful of his enigmatic ability, which is going to be giving him power on every 10 hits. So you have to be really mindful of this power steal that he gets. So I'm baiting a lot of his special attacks and trying my best to avoid taking him to his special 2, because once he triggers his special 2, then I have to wait a long time for his invisibility to expire. But other than that, it's a very straightforward fight with Stark and Spider-Man, because the auto evade from Stark and Spider-Man can help reduce a lot of chip damage. And yeah, he just hits very hard, and this fight should be over pretty soon. And the next fight is going to be Luke Cage. So Luke Cage in the Abyss of Legends is definitely one of the hardest fights, and back in the day it used to be the most costly fight ever. But it's nice to go back in the Abyss of Legends in 2026 and solo it with rank 4 7-star champions. So I brought the Captain Britain specifically for the Luke Cage fight, because she has access to the slow on her special one attacks, and she also is a ramp up champion, and once you go through a couple of her special 3 cycles, her special damage is really insane, and she's going to handle that fight without any problems. And the next fight in the path is going to be Old Man Logan, and for the Old Man Logan, you have to be careful about his regeneration ability, which is going to be a very strong passive regeneration. So you need some kind of heal block or complete mitigation of his regeneration abilities with Despair Mastery. So for that fight, I brought Wasp in my team. So Wasp has a lot of power stings, and that's going to allow her to completely shut down the regeneration abilities of Old Man Logan, and that will make the fight pretty straightforward. And Wasp is in general also very good damage dealer once you fully apply her maximum power stings. Afterwards, the next fight is going to be Havoc. So yeah, Havoc in this state of play is going to be pretty straightforward, because his detonations are not going to hurt that much to rank 3 or rank 4 7 stars. So you can take him with pretty much any champion without armor up abilities. You don't have to be very scared of his plasma detonations. Just be careful of not using any energy based champions, because in that case the plasma damage can really ramp up and you will not have a good time. And after the Havoc, the next fight is going to be Dormammu. Again, a very straightforward fight with Wasp, because she doesn't gain any buffs, so you never have to really worry about the degeneration damage, and it's going to be a very straightforward fight. After Dormammu, we are going to take on Joe Fixit. So yeah, Joe Fixit is a bit of an annoying fight, because he can gain different kinds of buffs and put different kinds of debuffs based on his luck. And in this case, I didn't have a very good luck when I was using Nick Fury on the Joe Fixit fight, and that's pretty much the only time I will have to be forced to be used a revive. But yeah, apart from that, this fight is quite straightforward, and you can do it with any champion on the team. The next fight is going to be Modo. So Modo is also pretty straightforward with any champion. You just have to be careful of his astral evade, which can get you a bit, but for the modified I'm going to use Doctor Strange, who is also an amazing ramp up champion and perfect for these large health pools, because once you fully ramp him up to his 100 charges, then his damage output is really awesome, and you are just literally spamming the special attacks all the time and plowing through these big health pools very easily. And yeah, after Modo, the next fight is going to be Venom the Duck. This fight is I'm going to take it with Doctor Strange as well. He will have an absolute special attack spam fiesta, and yeah, you can imagine it will be a lot of it will be quite an easy and fun fight. The next fight on the path is going to be Howard the Duck. Again, fairly standard fight. You just have to get rid of his indestructible charges by critting him, and afterwards it's fairly straightforward. You can use pretty much any champion, but I'm going to use Stark and Spider-Man because he has a lot of crit rate, so he's able to get through the indestructible charges fairly quickly. So yeah, pretty easy fight. The next fight is going to be Hyperion, which is again an awesome fight for Doctor Strange. You are able to completely take away all his defensive abilities like power gain and the abyssal special ability of indestructible and unstoppable. So yeah, it's a very easy fight for Doctor Strange. Next fight is also going to be pretty similar, and it's going to be champion, and Doctor Strange is going to absolutely manhandle him. The next fight is going to be Cyclops. Yeah, Cyclops again, a pretty standard fight. You just have to alternate between parrying and evading his special attacks. But once you get down to this rhythm, you can clear him down with pretty much any champion on the roster. So yeah, on the next fight you are going to deal with Loki. So yeah, the Loki is also a pretty standard fight. You can use pretty much everything, but I'm going to use Doctor Strange because his power gain is going to pretty much always keep me safe from being completely power drained and taking that burst of damage. So yeah, pretty easy fight for Doctor Strange. And the next fight is going to be Aegon. So yeah, Aegon is a bit tricky fight because your basic attacks don't have any ability accuracy, so your basic attacks don't do anything. But since Doctor Strange is always spamming special attacks, so it's a perfect fight for him, and the fury buffs from Aegon just supercharge him. So yeah, it's a very good fight for Doctor Strange. And yeah, the next fight on the path is going to be Invisible Woman, and this is a bread and butter fight for Nick Fury. He's going to have an amazing time in this fight. You just have to go unblockable in the second life of Nick Fury, and he's going to completely ignore all kinds of evade, miss, and completely shut down Invisible Woman and just kill her very fast. And the second last fight on the path is going to be Cull Obsidian. It's going to be very fast for Doctor Strange because Cull Obsidian takes a lot of burst damage whenever his buffs are nullified, and yeah, that just plays directly into Doctor Strange abilities. So yeah, it's going to be one of the fastest fights of the whole path. And finally, in the collector fight, you can use pretty much all your champions that are left on your team, but to start off I'm going to go with Doctor Strange because once he's ramped up he can take down his health and a lot of phases very quickly. But yeah, he's pretty much a good option because you can stop yourself from doing a lot of combo attacks and prevent evade by just always spamming special attacks, and that's going to help you a lot. And also Doctor Strange can recover a lot of block damage, so he's a pretty good option for that fight. And he's also able to nullify the unstoppable, so it's a direct counter for his unstoppable as well. And yeah, that's pretty much it for this video, and you can like, share, and subscribe for more of these videos. Goodbye.
thin. Now you got me reaching out. And do you see you got me falling in more times than I can get out. Down in the deep of my mind, I crawl for you and you're always inside. Down in the deep of my mind, how long do I got to keep you, to keep you? Down in the deep of my mind, I crawl for you and you're always inside. Down in the deep of my mind, trying so hard not to keep you, to keep you. More times than I can get out. Down in the deep of my mind, I crawl for you and you're always inside. Down in the deep of my mind, how long do I got to keep you, to keep you? Down in the deep of my mind, I crawl for you and you're always inside. Down in the deep of my mind, trying so hard not to keep you, to keep you. you got me reaching out. And do you see you got me falling in more times than I can get out. Down in the deep of my mind, I crawl for you and you're always inside. Down in the deep of my mind, how long do I got to keep you, to keep you? Down in the deep of my mind, I crawl for you and you're always inside. Down in the deep of my mind, trying so hard not to keep you, to keep you. More times than I can get out. Down in the deep of my mind, I crawl for you and you're always inside. Down in the deep of my mind, how long do I got to keep you, to keep you? Down in the deep of my mind, I crawl for you and you're always inside. Down in the deep of my mind, trying so hard not to keep you, to keep you. got me reaching out. And do you see you got me falling in more times than I can get out. Down in the deep of my mind, I crawl for you and you're always inside. Down in the deep of my mind, how long do I got to keep you, to keep you? Down in the deep of my mind, I crawl for you and you're always inside. Down in the deep of my mind, trying so hard not to keep you, to keep you. How long do I got to keep you, to keep you? Trying so hard not to keep you, to keep you. Do you remember how you held me then? Now you got me reaching out. Yeah. And do you see you got me falling in more times than I can get out. Down in the deep of my mind, I crawl for you and you're always inside. Down in the deep of my mind, how long do I got to keep you, to keep you? Down in the deep of my mind, I crawl for you and you're always inside. Down in the deep of my mind, trying so hard not to keep you, to keep you. you remember how you held me then? Now you got me reaching out. And do you see you got me falling in more times than I can get out. Down in the deep of my mind, I crawl for you and you're always inside. Down in the deep of my mind, how long do I got to keep you, to keep you? Down in the deep of my mind, I crawl for you and you're always inside. Down in the deep of my mind, trying so hard not to keep you, to keep you. How long do I got to keep you, to keep you? Trying so hard not to keep you, to keep you. Do you remember how you held me then? Now you got me reaching out. Yeah. And do you see you got me falling in more times than I can get out.